It's common for players and teams to struggle with solving problems both in game and outside of the game. In game, it can be, for example, when we sit in a choke, we don't know how to push through, we don't know how to attack a point, or maybe we don't know how to kill a certain hero or counter a specific comp, or maybe we are stopped in plans, or we don't know how to deal with tilt and so on. And outside of the game, it can be, for example, we don't know why something went wrong in practice or went wrong in a match and what caused us to lose it. It can be wondering why something went well in scrims, but then didn't work in a match. And it can also be why we fail to see why we underperform or find a way to break slumps. And yeah, I will try my best to give you the 3 major methods that I learned throughout my career to solve issues like these. And I also understand what and exactly why something went wrong when I use these methods. This is something that also can be applied for when you want to anti-strat someone, for example, when you want to see why something went well, but also when you don't understand the success behind a random composition you did in scrims or something you just felt like doing. So, but yeah, that's a little different from how you look at things when they didn't go as expected, because there's some other elements to take into account. But that I'll make a different video for that. Just make sure you subscribe and yeah, wait for videos like that, because I'm definitely gonna visit them. So the first approach is called the shotgun approach. And this is where the intuition, experience, skill, and intelligence of a player comes into play. Basically, you want to define the problem first. And when you use the shotgun approach, you look at multiple you look at multiple causes to a problem at once, essentially. So you basically guess what went wrong. And it might sound simple and pretty bad, but it has its usages, and there's actually a method to it. And you do it by asking yourself questions such as, what did I feel like, or what do I feel like went wrong, and what might that look like, for example, or what might that be? And you need to ask a question that gives you an answer when you ask yourself that, and it's not a question that you ask someone else, if that makes sense. And then when you want to go to the solution, you do exactly the same. You guess a solution, essentially. And easiest way is by asking yourself a question: what might the solution be, and what may that, or what do I feel the solution is, and what might that look like, for example, or something similar like that. It might be a brilliant solution, but in most cases it's often the wrong solution, because you miss the root to the problem, which is what triggered something to happen. And it's deeper than you think sometimes, and it's very easy to it's very easy to overlook it, especially when you're a rookie. So when you don't find the root, it's very probable that a problem will repeat itself in the future. For example, if you make the wrong hero switch and you don't solve the logic behind a hero switch, then it might happen in a scrim or in a match and so on. And yeah, it goes for any problem, basically. Yeah, it's a pretty good solution, or a pretty good method for problem solving when you're in game, for example, and you have very short time at hand, or it could be during a match break, for example, because when things are urgent, you don't have time to think and analyze. You just take a guess, and that's why experience, skill, intelligence, and so on plays a big role. And it's usually why the more experienced players are the ones that lead the teams in these decisions, because they have the most trial and error. They have trained their intuition the most. And yeah, that's That's the first method. The second one is called the exploratory approach, and this is where every side, every angle, etc., of a problem is explored, and it's not theoretically every side and every angle. It's more like everything you can think of, everything you can imagine, and while you can imagine a certain number of possible causes, there's an infinite amount of numbers, or possibly infinite amount of causes, if you understand how I mean. It's a pretty winding and torturous process, because you have to go through everything essentially, and yeah, then you select the most probable cause. It's similar to the shotgun method, but instead of taking many things at once, you take one thing and then you go to the next thing and then you go to the next thing until you become tired of looking for things. And the solution is essentially the same as there. You take one possible solution, and then if that's not 100 in your gut feeling, then you take the next one and keep going until you feel like you have found the right one. It's so the moment you want to use, or the situation you want to use this approach, is when you have more time at hand than an urgent situation, basically medium to long time frames. And for example, if you aren't very analytical of yourself, for example, if you feel like you rely more on intuition, this is gonna be great for you, because if, for example, if you are a great player and you have trained your intuition for years and years of trial and error, in Overwatch or whatever, you will have already trained yourself to use this without even thinking about it. But if you're, for example, a coach that doesn't spend hours and hours and weeks and months, years scrimming, then you might want to try the third and final approach, which is called the analytical approach. And it's also one more thing about the second one is that the exploratory approach is more, it's less likely to be abandoned when you are less likely to quit the process of trying to solve something with it than it is with the third one, because the third one is even more tiresome, because it requires great discipline and everything to stay on track and not to rush or abandon the process. But anyways, the third and the last approach is called the analytical approach, and it's used in the same time frame as the second one, and in other words, that means medium to long time frames. Medium to long time frames, and it also generates the most powerful solution, because you'll be able to find the roots to a problem much, much easier with this approach, because when we use this, we look at a full analysis and background of a situation. So, for example, if let's say we have a team fight, and the team fight is on first point on King's Row, and let's say we call for a Zarya and Hanzo ult combo to happen. Maybe Hanzo is delayed and the grab ends before the dragon comes, and the enemies don't die, and we basically waste a team wipe combo. And how do we solve that? Well, with the other two approaches, we would take some shallow solution that's easy to come by. But with this one, we have to look at everything in the match, or everything in the team fight, and whatever happened before that. So if it's the third team fight, we have to look at the third team fight plus everything before that. If it's the second one, we look at the second team fight and not after the second one. So we break down everything there as in as small parts as we possibly can, and you want to look at every part as a breadcrumb, basically, and the root itself is the very first breadcrumb in a breadcrumb trail, if that makes sense. It's the trigger, essentially. It's what made the action or decision happen. And the way we validate, if we found a root, for example, if we found, let's say that the Hanzo was delayed in his button press for the dragon because he was attacked by a tracer that flanked and he was distracted, then the root to that would be his, let's say it's his positioning, for example, before the tracer arrived to him. And the way we can validate that route is by starting from start to and go to finish. And if we then look at the finished or where we are when we finish, and we see that we are in the center of the problem or problematic situation, for example, when the dragon was used too late in this case, then we have found the root, and we can effectively target, make a solution specifically targeting that route. And once you've solved a problem, you basically won't repeat it, because it's the same as burning your hand on a stove, and you might do it one more time, but you're very likely to repeat a mistake like that. But yeah, it's a very rough approach to use, because you rely on a very systematic like you go step by step, and in turn becomes very systematic. And to be very systematic, you need great discipline, you need to have patience, and you need to also deal with not finding the root in a few days maybe, or it might take time, in other words, and it might make some people prone to abandon the process and just go for something else or completely ignore the issue. However, my preferred way of solving medium to long term time frame issues is to use the analytical approach. While if I have short time on hand and something is urgent, I'd use the shotgun approach. I don't have any problems with using the shotgun approach now. I used to have it early on when I started coaching, because I thought that everything could be planned. I thought that everything could be analyzed, and I overestimated my own ability, because I'm not a supercomputer. I'm just human, and so is everyone else. And you make mistakes, you overlook things, you're biased, all that stuff. And the key to understand how, or the key to make the shotgun approach work in tense situations, is by understanding how important it is to make a decision rather than making the right decision. And for many, it's the fear of failure, and then the fear of confrontation later on, and all that stuff. It can also be only the fear of confrontation once you make a mistake. For example, some players are afraid to make the issue because they don't like to be they don't like to face the situation where they need to confront that failure. And it's totally understandable. It's a powerful tool once you understand how you can overcome the fear, but that's a thing on its own, of course. And but yeah, the most common issue when using the shotgun approach is that you stop and you try to overthink something, for example, when you just need to make a decision and accept that it might be wrong. So yeah, these are the three major methods I use to solve problems. I don't really use the second one as much. I used to use it in the start of my coaching career. I highly recommend it for people that don't feel comfortable using the third one yet, because it might take days to break down a match. It might take weeks. And eventually, when you practice it enough, when you understand it fully, you can break down a whole match in 2 hours, in 3 hours, 4 hours. And it's very effective. And it's something that if you do it in a collaboration, for example, with your team or with a coaching staff, it greatly increases the efficiency of problem solving. Yeah, make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button if you like this video and want to see more. Hope you like it, and feel free to give me feedback.